Today we have a fun topic, and that is how to choose your next or even your first thru hike. If you are an experienced thru hike, maybe you've done a long trail like the Appalachian Trail, the PCT, or even the CDT, you know what it takes to be away from home for a really long time. If you have thought about doing those kinds of hikes and you're a little intimidated because you don't have 6 months off, or you don't even know how you could arrange your life to make that happen, or you've been doing some section hikes and you just feel like you really actually like to do an entire hike in one go, then this is the video for you. Welcome back if you have been following along for a while. And if you haven't met me, I am Joey. I'm an experienced thru hiker and kind of a backpacking addict. So I love sharing my tips and advice here and also hearing from you down in the comments. So I am starting off the year with some really big plans for 2024, and I'll tell you at the end of the video where my next thru hike is going to be. I've actually got some really exciting plans, so I'm looking forward to sharing that with you. But first, I want to help you figure out where you should hike next. Now, I can't tell you which trail to choose. A lot depends on where you live and what your financial resources are and the time that you have. But I can give you some tips to make it a lot easier to choose where you should go for your next thru hike. Now, if you really enjoy backpacking, you probably have a long wish list of trails that you would like to cover. There are 11 national scenic trails in the United States, and some of them make much better thru hikes than others. I will put the list down in the description if you want to see what they are. Some of them are trails that are still in development. Some of them are trails like the Appalachian Trail and the PCT that have been around for much longer. But there is a whole universe of trails out there that you can thru hike, and they range anywhere from over 3,000 miles to just 25, 30, 40, even 50 miles. So you could do a much shorter thru hike if that's what you would like to do. And a lot of people may do that just because they're planning a longer thru hike and they want to do a short thru hike just to kind of get their feet under them, if you will, to get their trail legs, test their gear, and that sort of thing. So there's nothing wrong with doing a shorter thru hike if that fits your ambitions and your objectives. So don't feel bad if you're like, I can only do, a 50-mile thru hike or a 100-mile thru hike. Don't worry about it. Do whatever is best for you. And I have most recently done the Colorado Trail last summer, which was my second attempt, and you can watch that up here if you're interested in seeing how it went the second time around. It was really a beautiful, magical trail, and I loved it. And I also love the fact that it was only 500 miles, which makes it a trail that takes 3 or 4 weeks to do for most people, instead of the 6 months roughly that it might take to do a trail that's 2,000 plus miles. So how do you get to making a decision like that? The first thing is to take that long wish list that you have. And what I do is actually keep a note on my phone so that I can add to the note just whenever I'm thinking about it. But you could also do a spreadsheet or some other kind of list of trails that you find intriguing. And I keep some detailed information on that list to help me pick and choose when it's time for me to try to decide where I'm going to hike next, which is always a challenge. So the basic information that I have on that list is the name of the trail, how long it is in terms of distance, typically how long it takes to hike on average. And some trails are shorter but take longer because they're more difficult. Other trails may be longer, but they're somewhat fast because of the terrain. So it's important to capture both of those data points to factor into your decision making. And then I also make note of things like the best seasons to hike, the most popular seasons, and even times that you would not want to hike that particular trail. I look to see if there are permits required because some, like for example, the PCT, if you're going to thru hike, getting that permit requires registration in the fall of each year, and they have a permit draw that you have to register for in, I believe it's in November, and then another secondary in early January. If you don't get those permits, you can still hike the PCT, and you can still put together a thru hike with permits for different areas, but it's much, much easier if you get the permit for that whole thru hike. So I keep that information on my list for each particular trail. And I will tell you that the trail that I'm going to be hiking in just a few weeks does require permits, but they're a little bit different. So it's also valuable to understand what kind of permits are required. Are they just camping permits? Is it a permit to hike the whole trail? Do you have to pay for the permit? Do you have to register in advance? That's really good information to capture as you build your list of where you want to go. Now, one of the things I've done for 2024 is, first of all, made the decision that I am not going to go back and reattempt the PCT this year. I started it in 2022, and unfortunately had to get off after just a week or so, actually, for health reasons. And because that is a much longer trail, the past couple of years I've had some other commitments in my life, and I haven't been able to take that much time. So I thought about doing it for this year and decided no, it's not the year. So I'm going to put together 3 or possibly even 4 shorter through hikes. And the way I have chosen this is looking at my list that's got all of the trails that I'd like to hike, and then those items that I mentioned to you. How long does it take to hike? Maybe what's the permit process? Can I just get up and go, or do I have to plan in advance? Then some other factors to consider are things like logistics. Like maybe this is a short trail. Maybe you're looking at doing a trail that's only, say, 200 miles. And you think, oh, that's easy. I can just get there and I can hike and go. But maybe it's a really remote trail and the logistics of getting there are not so easy. So things to think about are, can you park at the trailhead? Can you get a shuttle back? If you can't, then how are you going to get there? What's the best way? What kind of travel arrangements do you need to make? Is this a trail that you can drive to? Is it one you need to fly to? Is it so remote that you need some other kind of transportation to get to the trail? That will factor into the time that the trail takes overall. Even if you're doing a short through hike, you may have to say, okay, that trail is going to take me 5 days to hike, but I need to allow 4 days to travel because it is so remote. The logistics of getting to and from the trail are important, as well as the logistics of getting resupplied on the trail, because if it's a short trip, you can carry all your food with you, right? But if you have to stop along the way and get food, you need to know how close are towns and how easy is that resupply process going to be. Can you hitch? Are shuttle drivers readily accessible? Is there a hostel nearby where you could get a ride into town and stay at the hostel and get a shower or that sort of thing? Those logistics are important to consider as you're choosing a through hike, because they can kind of make or break how much fun that hike is, especially depending on your experience and how much you really like spending a lot of time in the woods, or how much you care about whether you have a heavy food bag or a light food bag. So logistics of resupply are important, and that also matters if you think you might need to send resupply boxes. I've got a video up here on how to do that if you have not done resupply boxes before. Understanding what you need to send and where you need to send it, if that's necessary or preferred for the hike that you're looking at, is an important part of the planning process. So you want to factor that into the decision making up front. You don't want to choose a hike and then suddenly find out, okay, I need to allow 5 extra days during the course of this hike because I'm going to have to get on and off trail. To package that in as you are looking at that particular hike, so that you know not only how long does it take to hike the number of miles that are there, but how long is the whole hike going to take, whether that is transportation to and from the trail, as well as getting on and off the trail to resupply. Now, another important factor in choosing a through hike is how much is this going to cost you. Once you've got all your backpacking kit, it's really an inexpensive hobby because you've got that sunk cost of your gear. But if gear breaks and you need to replace something, or if there are particular pieces of gear that you need, like an ice axe or microspikes or something specialized that you don't already have, then you're going to want to budget that as part of your planning for your through hike. Also, if you have a lot of travel and transportation, like we talked about, then the cost of airline flights might be prohibitive for you, depending on what your budget is. Staying in hostels, resupply, things like that could also factor into the cost of this through hike. Another cost is taking time off work. If you're not going to be able to do this through hike on a paid vacation, what is it going to cost you to not be working during that time? Whatever the budget is that you just sketch it out, put together a rough budget, at least to start as you're choosing between different hikes. And then see, okay, do I have that money saved up already? Do I need to save for 6 months or even a year to get that money together? Then that's not a through hike that you can do in the short term, but you can put it on your plan for a next year type of hike. I want to take just a minute and ask you to please subscribe if you have not already done that. And if you are subscribed and you've been enjoying my videos, if you could share them with someone else who you think would like them, I would really appreciate that. Another factor that I think is very important, and this is particularly salient for me because I like to backpack alone, and I do quite frequently. However, some trails are trails that I would not want to do without a buddy, just for safety reasons. Not only the companionship of having a friend to do a trail with you, but sometimes it's just safer to be with somebody else, whether that means that this is a very difficult hike with some dangerous stretches. It might possibly be wildlife concerns that you have. Like, I would not go into grizzly country by myself. Absolutely not. So that's an area where if I was hiking in that kind of environment, I would certainly be looking for a partner who I had hiked with before, that I knew had a similar pace, similar hiking style, that would be a good person to do that trail with. Another trail I think that I would probably not do by myself is the Florida Trail. And it's relatively flat. It's not like I have to worry about falling down a mountain, but you're hiking through swamps. You're going to be doing some road walking. You may have some long hitches. So those are just kinds of things that I would prefer to do with a partner rather than just being out there in that remote area completely by myself. Even though you may have a Garmin, and I highly recommend a Garmin or some other kind of satellite communicator so that you have emergency contact when you need it. Even though you have that, nothing is a substitute for having a partner there if you do have an emergency. Florida swamps, it could be a snake bite or a spider bite or even an alligator. That doesn't happen very often. Don't think that alligators are out there to get you, but things can happen out there. And just take into account the safety factors that impact the trail that you're looking at and make a decision whether, okay, are you comfortable doing that alone or do you need a partner? And if you need a partner, how are you two going to coordinate timing, budget, and make sure that you can both go at the same time? Another factor to consider is the difficulty of the trail. And I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier because it does impact how long it takes you to hike a certain number of miles, right? The Colorado Trail, for example, has some pretty difficult sections, but it's also got some long sections that are just a breeze. It's not the kind of grade that you might see on the Appalachian Trail where you're going straight up and straight down on a regular basis. But there are other factors that make it difficult, like the altitude. And so you should be considering your physical conditioning. Are you really going to be able to hike as fast as you want to hike and do that trail in the time that you want? Think about the difficulty of the trail, maybe even assign it your own personal rating on a 1 to 10 or 1 to 5 so that you can kind of rank the trails you're looking at and decide, okay, I'd love to do that trail, but I need to do simpler backpacking trails to get more experience before I'm ready to do trail X, if you will. Now, seasons matter too, because there are some trails that I would love to hike, like the Tahoe Rim Trail, and now in January would definitely not be the time to do that trail. Other trails are, not so great in the summertime because they're hot and exposed. I mean, I wouldn't want to do the Arizona Trail in June or July, but I might want to do it in the fall or in the early winter, if that made sense. Looking at the seasons and aligning that with when your availability is, and even think about things like, do you have family commitments? Do you have other things coming up in your life that are going to affect when you're able to do a hike that you would want to do? Take all of that into account and then decide, based on your list of these are places that I would love to hike, what are the ones that are most feasible for you in the short term. Particularly for myself, I got really excited because I wanted to do the Tour de Mont Blanc in Italy, Switzerland, and France. It's only a little over 100 miles. I think it's 110 miles. And I was like, that's awesome. I would love to do this hike next summer. But logistics for that are pretty difficult. It's not so much that it's hard to get to Europe, but that is a trail where they don't allow wild camping or backcountry camping in a lot of places. So you need to have reservations at campsites or hostels. It called them something different over there, but you need to have reservations planned. And I've been hearing from people that even as late as the end of 2023, accommodations for the summer of 2024 were completely booked up. I thought, I can't plan that far ahead because my boyfriend may or may not be available at that time. So going with a partner was not going to be feasible. That took that trail off my list. So what trail did I choose? I've actually chosen 3 for this year. I'm not going to tell you all of them right now because some of them are coming up later in the year, but in just a few weeks, I'm going to be hopping on a plane and heading to California to do the Trans-Catalina Trail. Now that trail is only 38.5 miles, but it's got 10,000 feet of elevation gain. It is an epic trail on Catalina Island in the Pacific Ocean. You have to fly to California. If you don't live within driving distance, you have to take a ferry to get there, and you have to book campsites for each night that you are on the trail. So while you don't need a technical permit to hike the trail, you need camping permits, and they serve as your hiking permit for being on the trail. It is absolutely gorgeous from everything I've seen, and I can't wait to bring it to you with some really amazing video. I will also share with you coming up the logistics for that hike because it is one that is a little complicated to work out because of those camping reservations, and it's hard to get some sites at certain times of year. So I'll share all those logistics with you on how I'm getting there, what my plans are, how much it's costing, all that in some upcoming videos. But I just wanted to share with you how excited I am about that as my winter hike. And that's going to be great to keep me in shape in the wintertime. And then I've got a little bit longer through hike planned for the spring that I'll tell you about when I get back from California. I'm really excited about that. And I was able to make that decision using that process that I have just described to you, starting with the basic data points and then digging a little bit deeper to see what's the best through hike for me during these particular times of the year when I'm going to be available to go out and do a through hike. Let me know if you have been planning a through hike. Drop a note down in the comments and tell me where you're planning to go this year. And stay tuned for my upcoming videos, where the next 2 or 3 videos will probably be all about the Trans Catalina Trail. And then after that, my thru hikes for the rest of the year. Take care.